And as we have observed in the past, people will be trickling in. And thank you all for being here. Amy, for your help, and the Jewish Community Center of Washtenaw County of Ann Arbor for hosting us once again. And of course, thank our guests, who never had more inspiring guests. And I'm sure by the end of this evening, you're going to feel the same way. Let me introduce Dylan Morris is a senior at Oxford High School, and Lauren Jasinski is a Royal Oak School Board member and a member of the End Gun Violence Michigan Steering Committee, where she serves as the liaison between the coalition and the Michigan Education Association. Dylan is also the executive director of No Future Without Today, and Lauren is the treasurer. We'll learn more about No Future Without Today, a survivor-led social welfare initiative later on. Did I miss anything about you two in terms of roles and titles? If not, why don't we proceed? Lauren experienced the shooting at Oxford High School, and because of the critical need to protect our children, they are willing to talk to us today about that experience, for which we are very grateful, and a little guilty for putting you through this. But I think that for people to really understand both of you and what you're doing and what needs to be done, while we don't have to go into graphic detail at all, we should know the magnitude of this horror. In addition, we're going to talk about what came out of that, at least for Dylan and Lauren, and the work they're doing to see that no other children, school workers, parents will have to go through this again. So, as we all know, gun safety is critical. I was a little surprised to see just how high the stakes are. In just the first 10 weeks of this year, not 3 months, 10 weeks, there have been more than 100 mass shootings in this country. And gunfire has claimed the lives of more than 8,100 people and injured more than 6,000. But before we dive into our subject, the evening, were you at Oxford High School the day of the shooting? Why? It's just simply that. What were you there? Lauren, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your involvement?
Yeah, of course. And again, thank you for having us here. I don't want you to feel guilt for inviting us. It's an honor to be able to share our story and to be joined by people that we know are caring and want to. Nobody's here to put us on the spot, and we are doing this by choice. But I do appreciate the acknowledgement that it's difficult to ask survivors to do this, and it's difficult to ask survivors to be in this position to have to fight all of the time. But it's important to both Dylan and I that we're heard. And like you said, that people can weigh, yes, the magnitude of what happened to us, but also the action steps that every single person can take in our state. But yeah, we'll get to some homework later. So like Chuck said, my name is Lauren Jasinski. I was a teacher in Oxford Community Schools for the last 10 years. One kind of like anecdote I always have been using to introduce myself lately is that when I started teaching, so my very first year in a classroom of my own, actually was a middle school teacher to start out with, is in 2012. That was the winter of the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary. And so I had to join my 7th grade students the following day and figure out what it looked like to talk to young people about a place that was supposed to be safe and loving and comfortable, and not be able to absolutely guarantee them that they were always going to be safe there with me, and that no matter what I could do personally, or no matter what I was willing to do personally, that sometimes didn't matter. And so even though this is now a very personal story to me, gun violence as an education issue has always been an incredibly important part of the work that I do. I've volunteered with Moms Demand Action. I've worked locally for commonsense candidates. I've had a disarm hate every town poster in my classroom for the last 7 years. Like this isn't just a now issue for me, that this has been something that schools have been on the front lines of for a very long time. And not only the violence that happened to us in the form of a mass shooting, but neighborhood violence, domestic violence, home violence, the threats and the fear that comes along with gun violence in our country and our state are brought into a school building every single day. And so educators are very, very aware of it. And so that's a little bit about like my own background. But in terms of like that day, it was a normal day. It was a Tuesday. I remember it being cold. And yeah, it was a regular, completely unremarkable day until it wasn't. The shooting started immediately before our 5th hour period started. I had a class of 9th grade world history students that was just about to start. I had about 31 students in that class, 25 of which were with me just about getting ready to get started because we were about a minute away from the actual start of our class period. So it was technically passing time. So people were kind of bouncing around and doing all different things. But I did have 25 students in my classroom with me. The shooting started directly outside of my classroom. And so we immediately locked down and I sheltered in place for nearly 3 hours with the students that I was with. We were the very last classroom to be evacuated from the building just because of our proximity. So it was a very, very long time that we were physically in lockdown. But yeah, I think what we're going to have the opportunity to talk about a lot tonight really has been this recovery process, some expectations, some unexpected things, and really what we've done with our work since then. So again, we're glad to be here.
Thank you. And indeed, that's the real purpose of tonight's interview. Dylan, your story?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Chuck, for having us this evening. My name is Dylan, and I am a senior at Oxford High School. I'm the executive director of No Future Without Today. I have always been interested in public service. So when I believe when I was 11, I went to Flint to pass out water to Flint residents at the height of the Flint water crisis. And to see the people there not have access to clean drinking water at the hands of government inaction, that was really eye-opening to me. And so I've always had an interest in helping people. And I feel like that experience goes along with what I experienced at my school. Gun violence is preventable. It is a product of government inaction in the same way that, what happened in Flint is. And so, I've always been interested in this work. And yeah, I'm just really happy to be here this evening. I'll tell you all a little bit about what happened to me that day. I was headed to my 5th hour class, my English class, and I was one of the last students to file into that class. And then a student came in after me saying that shots had been fired. They saw smoke, and then there had been gunshots heard around the corner near a bathroom. And we started to bar the door. We armed ourselves with scissors, tape dispensers, a hockey stick, anything we could find at the moment, just as we have been trained to do for the past so many years as, I was in school. So we all armed ourselves. The teacher started dialing the school office or the police. I'm not sure who she was dialing, but the look on her face, the look on my classmates' face, it really filled my senses. And, we all just sat there staring at the doorknob, waiting and seeing if we would have to defend ourselves or if anyone would come to our door. So that's kind of my story of that day. I know afterwards, when we went to Meyer, our designated location, to be picked up and to be reunited with our parents, I learned later that day that 4 of my classmates didn't make it home. Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, Justin Schilling, and Madison Baldwin. And so that left me in denial for weeks, wrestling with my thoughts and actions, debating what I should do next. And I really resorted to this advocacy work after because it meant so much to me in the years prior. So it was almost a natural response for me.
Were you able to communicate with your family?
I was, yep. I sent them a message during the shooting that I loved them and I'm not sure if I would make it out safely.
I don't think that's anything a parent ever wants to hear. Lauren, how did you meet Dylan?
I've known Dylan since he was a freshman. He showed up at my door one day and asked about our Model UN program. I was the coach of our Model United Nations team at school. He was the only freshman that we had involved. And yeah, he just like very obviously had the passion and the desire to talk about the world and improve the world. And he showed up and wanted to get involved and was a huge member of the team from day one. And so we competed, he competed along with that team. I've had him in class on and off a couple times throughout his own career. And then Model UN stopped during COVID, obviously, as everything kind of came to a screeching halt. But during the school closure, Dylan had approached me and asked to start a chapter of the High School Democrats of America at Oxford. We were gearing up for an election season. We were both involved in local politics in our own communities. And he really wanted a way to bring that to high school students. And so we formed that club during the school closure of like the summer of 2020. Yeah, launched it at Oxford that fall. Also helped a few students try and get a Oxford Republican club off the ground too, so that we had equal representation and fairness. But we did it. And so Dylan, yeah, I mean, like most things, he took that and ran with it. He soon became the chair of the Michigan High School. I'm going to mess up these titles. The Michigan High School Democrats of America. He was the chair of the statewide organization for a year as well. And so we, like Dylan said, we've both been drawn to advocacy. We've both been drawn to local politics. And so this was kind of a natural fit.
What was the initial reaction in the community to the count?
After the shooting or to our organization?
No, after the shooting, sorry.
A lot of shock, a lot of disbelief. Oxford has always been an incredibly close-knit community. This is not our first version of tragedy, right? We've lost community members, we've lost students before. And so I've always, throughout my decade of being a community member there, I've always seen us band together and support each other. And so I never had doubted that. And I did see that. But I also saw a lot of judgment in terms of people's coping strategies. I saw a lot of disagreement both within the community and within the school about the best ways to proceed. And a true lack of resources. You know, we were unprepared to deal, we as a staff were unprepared to deal with what we were returning to. And the community was unprepared too. We didn't have the resources we needed.
Did the community's attitude start to change, or at least on the part of some people, once you started your advocacy work?
You know, I think I would say so. The community is quite conservative. We had a lot of really amazing response to our organization, but we also had some pushback. I mean, we started planning a march in downtown Oxford that gathered over 600 participants after the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And that gathered some pushback from community members, particularly older members of the community, who said that my colleagues on this organization were just kids. And what I would say to that is the moment that the shooter gained access to the unsecured firearm and decided to use it in that hallway to kill 4 students was the moment that I lost my childhood. And so many kids in that school lost their childhoods. We're doing stuff that nobody should ever have to do. And I really, you know, we've been through something so traumatic and we are experts on it now. And so, yeah, the response has been overwhelmingly great, though, I will say.
Has your representatives in the Michigan House and Senate been supportive of the legislation that you're trying to get passed?
You know, I think we all saw a few days ago this past week when Representative Josh Shriver voted no on secure storage. Secure storage could have played a huge...
And he's your senator?
He is our representative.
Yes.
Yeah. Secure storage could have played a very large role in the shooting, could have either prevented it or been used as a tool of accountability to hold the parents accountable for their actions, for their negligence, for leaving an unsecured firearm out where the shooter could use it to kill 4 students. And so he voted against that measure. So did our Senator, Ruth Johnson. And we also tried to meet with these representatives and senators on the Republican side, and they refused to meet with us, and they also did not offer any alternative times to meet with them. So we really tried with them, and that we do really look forward to working with them, though, in terms of mental health care access, to make sure that people, especially community members after mass shootings, have the resources available to them to cope, to recover, and so forth.
Did they or any of the other members of the House and Senate who didn't support this legislation say why they didn't? I understand not to you because they didn't meet with you, but did they, in either the process of debating the laws or publicly, did they make any statements as to why they didn't support it?
You know, a lot of these members said that it was in opposition to the Constitution, and so this is very pragmatic pieces of legislation. These are pragmatic. These have consensuses behind them. A majority of Michiganders support them. I think we all saw the poll, the Detroit News article, that had 88% of Michiganders supporting universal background checks, 80% supporting safe storage laws, and 78% supporting ERPOs, extreme risk protection orders. And so
Maybe I want to get a little slower. Some of your guests tonight are older.
extreme risk protection orders. So basically allowing medical professionals, a therapist, to report individuals if they are a threat to themselves or others to a court, and after due process, if the judge finds that they are a threat to themselves or others, their guns can be temporarily removed from them until they can get the help that they need.
How do you two cope?
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, lots of therapy. I have a great trauma therapist that I was hooked up with through Oakland County that has been an incredible resource for me and taught me a lot about the way that our brains work after trauma, or I guess don't work, really, is what there is to learn, is that your brain really disconnects from the rest of your body. So I have a great therapy. I have a great therapist. I have a great social system of support. My friends and neighbors who have taken very, very good care of me. And this advocacy work, it is, although it's difficult, it's really, really important. A phrase that we have been using continually that you saw like really highlighted last week when Gabby Giffords visited Michigan is to honor with action. And there's nothing in the whole world that we can do to bring Hannah, Tate, Justin, and Madison back. There's nothing that we can do to make this process easier for their families, or to change everything that we're missing and grieving and trying to talk about with our losses. But we can channel all of that action somewhere. And right now we're dedicating it to trying to make Michigan safer for everybody else. The package of bills, and we can talk more about legislation in a little bit too, but the package of bills that's proposed, like Dylan said, are common sense, widely accepted. If you guys have watched any of the testimony over the last couple of weeks, Micah Rector, one of the MSU March for Our Lives leaders, keeps reminding our legislators that this package of bills is the floor, not the ceiling. And that this really is just the very basic amount of what we can do right now. We aspire for a lot more. And like Dylan said, it's going to take a lot of appropriations and mental health supports to adequately get these things into place too, because really none of these laws touch too much on school violence. Personally, for us in Oxford, the secure storage laws would be pretty vital, both in preventing accidental deaths and accidents, as well as home suicides. But also in the case that Oxford's in, it would help us prosecute people when crimes are committed with their firearms.
Dylan, how are you coping?
I think just like Miss J said, I've been, receiving therapy too. I have two therapists, and so they've been a great help in my recovery process. I also, as Miss J said too, I resort to advocacy work. So one of my mottos throughout this process, it's been taking my frustration and my grief and turning it into advocacy work, productivity. And this is what we've been doing for the past 15 months here in Michigan, making sure that these bills get passed. And we saw a lot of this momentum occur after the MSU shooting, where we now have bills that have passed in the Senate and the House. We're waiting on extreme risk protection orders in the House right now, but we're expecting this legislation to get signed by the governor real soon here. So we're really excited to have this progress, and we've been working really hard.
How are your classmates doing?
There are some days where it's really tough at school. The environment isn't the same. Students are quiet, not really acting the way that they were before the shooting. But some days are fine. Some days you would think everything was normal. It just depends on the day, what's going on. I know a lot of times when there is a mass shooting that makes headlines, we're all set back here in Oxford a little bit, and our trauma creeps forth. I always say that trauma lives in the body. It affects everybody in different ways. I know personally, my trauma has affected me in ways where I'm foggy or I disassociate for a little bit. I know in other instances, it can affect people where they are worried that something else is going to happen again, or they're always on edge or alert. So it affects everybody differently, and I think we're all just moving forward in ways that we can. A lot of students at my school resorted to advocacy work, and a lot of them also resorted to just bringing communities together. There was an organization launched after the shooting called Oxford Legacy, which sought to bring Oxford students and Uvalde students together to just to kind of lean on one another. Excuse me. So I know that has been a huge part in other people's healing processes as well.
You both spoke of how helpful therapists have been for you. Have they been available to your classmates and to the other teachers as well?
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
In some ways. We did have the help and support of Oakland County Mental Health Network, as well as a couple trained trauma therapists as a staff. When we first were returning back to the building, we had a lot of building-wide workshops and support plans. In terms of the help that we were given there, the entire staff underwent trauma-informed training from Oakland Schools, which is our county level ISD that we're a member of. So there has been additional training. There has been things put into place. Dylan, did you just mention the All for Oxford, or were you talking about Legacy Center?
I was mentioning the Oxford Legacy, the IB student cohort.
Oh, yeah. And so in addition, this summer, Common Ground, which is an excellent mental health resource in the state, opened something called the All for Oxford Resiliency Center, which is a really, really beautiful resource for the community. There is walk-in and scheduled therapy for community members, staff, and teachers ongoing. There's therapy and support comfort dogs there all the time. There's craft opportunities. There's like homework help. They host our board meetings actually when we meet in person in Oxford, and they've been a really, really wonderful resource. It didn't exist the moment we were recovering. It took a while to get the funding and to get it established and everything. But yeah, that's a really great resource that we're lucky to have there. So yes, there has been support. It's not nearly enough though. Dylan and I both know of friends and coworkers who are still waiting to get into mental health professionals. I have coworkers that had to forego mental health care immediately following the shooting because we couldn't afford it because it wasn't covered by our school provided insurance. So, I mean, there are a lot of hurdles, which is the reason that you hear Dylan and I talking so much about gun safety reform and legislation hand in hand with mental health care.
You didn't just start advocating for gun legislation with this particular legislature. What happened when you went to the previous legislature? And in your press release, when the first bills were passed, you had a very interesting quote. Perhaps you remember it, or perhaps you don't. But in any case, I do, because I've got it in front of me. But I'm going to give you the first shot at what was the reaction when you and the parents went to the legislature?
Yeah, so I do remember that. I know last spring we were actually in Lansing a lot advocating with the then Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, and we were promised a hearing for safe storage, but we never ended up receiving it. And so with this new legislature, this new gun sense majority, we are very hopeful. We were very excited to see the results of that. We endorsed a lot of these candidates that ended up winning their elections. They ran on a gun sense priority set, and so we're really excited to see this new these new goals and priorities come out of the state legislature, and to continue moving forward. I know Ms. J, she talked about mental health care access, making sure that community members have quality, affordable mental health care access, implementing social emotional learning into school curriculum to make sure that students who may not get the supports at home are getting that support at school, to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. And also advocating for further gun safety reforms, magazine capacity regulations, also possibility a eventual ban on assault weapons. I know some states, Illinois has done that just recently. So we're very hopeful with these new outcomes out of the state legislature, and we'll just keep working toward these goals.
So much nicer than I am. My understanding was that you begged them to do something and they refused. So, but yeah.
No, they absolutely did. Dylan is being diplomatic, but yeah, Dylan was there. He was on the phone with Senator Rosemary Bayer almost immediately, right?
Yep.
She's been a huge champion and a huge advocate and used to represent Oxford. So she was a really, really powerful voice that we did have and a powerful ally that we did have. She was just working against a machine that really did not want to hear her. And so, but we did. Families did try and advocate immediately. Mr. St. Juliana, Hannah's dad, even had, meetings on the floor, testified in front of the representatives, and people were begging for this to be heard. We were even told that it would at least get a hearing, not even a vote, but a hearing, so that we could get some facts out there, so that we could actually hear some conversation about, like you said, you asked what are people saying when they vote no? We've never even in the last 40 years had the opportunity to have the conversation, right? It hasn't been on the floor to even get a discussion. And that was really the problem, was that advocates didn't know what to say about it and didn't know what kind of work needed to be done, because they weren't even allowing a conversation. So now that we've seen this very rapid movement, I would love to say that this is not a political issue, because it shouldn't be. We're talking about people's safety. But the change in the legislature has kicked something into high gear, and there's only a few reasons, that I can think of why it's different.
You're kind of diplomatic yourself. Tell us about End Gun Violence Michigan.
Yeah, so End Gun Violence Michigan is a statewide coalition. We were approached to become, we as an organization, No Future Without Today, was approached to become a member really in the summer, I think. But End Gun Violence Michigan formed in January of 2022, immediately following the shooting in Oxford. It was a group of faith leaders, labor organizations, and community activists who really wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping on each other's toes as we moved forward with asking for sensible gun reform. End Gun Violence Michigan isn't replacing an organization. It's really not even an organization of its own. It's truly a coalition of really, really powerful advocates across the whole state who were already doing this work. And we just wanted to make sure that we were speaking with a unified voice and using each other's strengths and networks. We have a huge coalition. We have the support of the Michigan chapter of the United Methodist Church, the Episcopalian Diocese of Michigan, the
MEA,
sorry?
the MEA.
Yeah, the MEA and AFT, so both of the major teachers unions in the state. We also have the kind of like usual suspects in terms of gun violence prevention advocacy, Brady, Moms Demand Action, Everytown, Giffords Gun Owners for Safety, as well as a lot of community organizations that were already doing this work and wanted to dedicate some of their efforts because they can't continue to do the good work that they're doing in their communities by bringing people up and getting people jobs and housing people if we keep losing people to gun violence. So organizations like Oakland Forward, United Way, Amnesty International, we've got, it's a huge coalition. And we're very, very proud. We're also beginning to add voices from the healthcare community, which is also super profound, because the more and more that we talk about this, and a point that was made very, very strongly during the hearings up in Lansing these past couple of weeks, is that this is a healthcare crisis, right? That we have to look at this as a health crisis, because trauma doctors and people working in our hospitals cannot keep caring for these long-term injuries, and the lethality of gun violence is just so much higher than any other type of violence. And so we also have a lot of physicians networks, some physicians unions. We have the Michigan chapter of the American Pediatrics Association. We're really, really showing that this is everybody's problem to care about because it affects everybody.
And with all this support, these bills are passing overwhelmingly, is that correct?
No, no, I wouldn't say overwhelmingly. We have tried really, really hard from day one to make this a bipartisan effort. We wanted the votes in the legislature to reflect these overwhelming polling numbers. Like Dylan said, we know that there's between 80 and 90% for most of these common sense actions. And they're passing along party lines.
You both testified, correct?
I did not. Dylan testified in both the House and the Senate, though. Yeah.
What was the essence of the message you tried to get across, Dylan?
Yeah, of course. So I basically told my story to the Senate and the House Judiciary Committees and urged them to act. And even after these really gut-wrenching testimonies that we heard in these committees, the Republicans voted no on these measures to have them come out of committee. And so, we
unanimously no on their part?
Unanimously no. No. The only Republicans that voted yes in the Senate was to advance the tax breaks for gun manufacturers and sellers. And then in the House side, the Republicans voted yes. I think it was 5 of them, including the minority leader. He voted yes on safe storage. A safe storage requirement. So we all urge them to act. This is a public health crisis. We have children who are dying daily. And we also really hit on the point that safe storage can also prevent suicides. I know when Florida instituted a robust safe storage law, youth firearm suicide rates went down 52%. And so we have a lot to work with, and we just keep pushing them. We keep urging them to act. And some have budged, some have not, but we'll keep pushing them.
Tell us a little bit about No Future Without Today.
Yeah, for sure.
Who's working on that? What are the activities? Yeah,
so we actually came up with the idea of No Future Without Today in January. So myself, Reina St. Juliana, who is the sister of Hannah St. Juliana, a victim of the Oxford shooting, Madeline Johnson, a best friend of Madison Baldwin, also a victim of the Oxford shooting, and then a bunch of community activists, students, are working alongside us. We actually came up with the idea of No Future Without Today in January 2022. But with dealing with our own trauma, we kind of put the plans on hold a little bit. But when Uvalde happened, we decided that we needed to act right away. We couldn't waste any time. And so, as I said earlier, we hosted the march downtown. And then we started to develop some of our goals, some of our priorities. At No Future Without Today, we believe that gun violence isn't a black and white issue. It's a nuanced problem that requires a myriad of solutions. So sensible gun reforms, and yes, expanding mental health care access. And so we've been doing a lot of this work throughout the past year or so. We have participated in a lot of panel events. We've been able to talk with lawmakers, lobby in Lansing. We helped Oakland County prepare a gun buyback program, which gathered over 250 unwanted firearms in our communities. So that was really important. We were able to put our pamphlets in those bags, in those goodie bags that the people would get when they submitted their firearms. And we've just been making sure that our voices are heard. Youth survivor voices are super important in this fight. But we also need to recognize here that we shouldn't be the only ones using our voices. We need other people to get involved in this fight. You all, if you want to, make a call to your legislator, urge them to pass ERPOs, extremist protection orders. That would be amazing, just to support these broad coalition of gun violence prevention organizations. That would be incredible, because we can't do this alone.
I will forever remember that phone call with Dylan the night following Uvalde, because like Dylan said, he had gotten to work pretty quickly following the shooting in Oxford because of the connections that he had. He drew up some incorporation papers, and we got things filed with the state of Michigan. We got everything in order to officially become a 501c4. And all of that happened pretty quickly in January and February, and then things really did get put on hold. But I just remember Dylan calling me the night after the shooting in Uvalde, and he said, "Miss J, we can't wait any longer." And I said, "No, we can't, Dylan." And so him and the other students got to work immediately the next morning, and they've really been meeting regularly since. They put things in order. They figured out what they wanted to do and what they wanted to say, and I think the care and love that they put forward for taking care of other young people is the really powerful part. That they that following the shooting in Uvalde, I think the thing that really racked the Oxford community the most was students knowing that other young people were going to be faced with the same 6 months that we had just gone through. And that was really, I think that was really the thing that kicked everybody into action. That they couldn't stand looking at those elementary school kids.
Many Holocaust survivors live with what's called survival guilt. Do you have survivor guilt?
I would say so. That day, I actually took a different route to my 5th hour classroom. I was set to go along the route where shots were fired. Something in me that day just told me to go a different way. I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, I do experience survivor's guilt. It's something that I've dealt with for the past 15 months, something that I talk with my therapist about a bit. It has touched me in ways, and I just continue to move forward.
Lauren, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of what ifs and unanswered questions still about that day, right? That every single person in the building kind of has these thoughts about, what if I was in a different place? What if I had visited a friend? What if I had stayed home? What if I had stayed home and not been in the building? All these types of things. And so it's hard to not let those types of things get the best of us. It's hard.
No, Amy, are there questions at this point before we continue?
Well, let's see. So one question is, how can we help legislator? I mean, you helped, you created something. What can we do? How can we act? So that's one comment.
Why don't we address that one before we proceed?
Okay.
What do
Yeah,
you-
of course. So do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
Okay. Even though we do have a lot of this legislation that has been passed in the House and Senate already, we do need people to continue to call and urge these legislators to push gun sense priorities, even though, you know, we do have this legislation passed. So push for further gun sense priorities. Also mental health care, make sure that people, you know, are pushing for this this sort of supports. And so, yeah, I think people can really make some actions with that. People can also donate to these gun violence prevention organizations. They can get involved in the coalition, participate in lobby days, and also plain vote when it's time in November in 2024, because we do have a battle ahead of us. We need to make sure that we keep this gun sense majority here in Michigan and also build on what we have in Washington. A little bit unrelated, but I will be going to Washington, D.C. this week to give remarks at a bill introduction. Representative Slotkin invited me to speak at the introduction of the Gun Violence Prevention Research Act, which basically allows that the CDC can do research on gun violence to see what's working, what we can build on, and what's not working. Currently, we have Republicans and the gun lobby that are limiting what research we can do on gun violence. And so this is a crucial step in making sure that we can build onto this progress.
So one comment is, at the risk of,
Sorry,
oh, go ahead.
Yes. After tonight, you don't have to do it tonight. Send me a list of the organizations that you think are worth support. And since you all registered, we will send to all of you who have registered that information as well as a link so you can find out how to who your representatives are and how to contact.
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely.
great. Thank you, Chuck.
Staying informed and engaging in these types of conversations is really vital because, like Dylan has said a few times, this cannot be solely on the shoulder of survivors. We need every single person to talk about why this is an important issue to them. I want you to push back on your friends and family if they act like this isn't an issue. We need you to be just as brave as these young people are when they're speaking out, because it's really, really important that all of our voices are in this. My absolute dream would be for legislators to get emails from us and just be so sick of hearing about gun violence as a priority that they can, you know, just add it to the pile. That this shouldn't be a unique situation just when there's a tragedy in our communities and then get moved on from. We know that everybody has incredibly important priorities, but this is one that we can agree with is widespread. It's a truly unique American problem. And we really need as many voices as possible. So like Dylan said, to continue speaking out about it to our legislators, but also in our everyday conversations, right? We would really appreciate it. But if you mentioned this conversation to one other person in your life, right? Brought it up, asked them what they thought about it, asked them if they were going to do anything about it.
You will get a link to this recording, all of you. And if you would tell them, you know, it's really worth your hour to view the recording. And we'll also send that out to everybody who registered, the link to this.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, it's great. More questions?
Yeah,
Yep.
so one comment is, at the risk of sounding very cynical, were these representatives funded by the NRA or gun manufacturer doing their campaign? So somebody's just making a comment. But one interesting question is, what readiness training is done with high school students today and how often? So what changed?
Yeah, so you know, at my school we have been doing a lot of well, prior to the shooting we did a lot of drills, shooter drills, pretending that there is someone at the school that is a threat, and we would arm ourselves with scissors, a hockey stick, tape dispensers. We would also barricade the door go in a corner. And also we have this device. It's a night lock, it's called, and it goes into the bottom of a door and kind of, how would you describe it, Ms. J? It kind of locks it from the inside.
Secondary lock for doors.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So we've been doing that throughout our childhoods. It's something that we've gotten used to. I know it really hardens the idea of school, and that school is not safe. It really bolsters that idea. And so it's not preventative at all. And so what we're trying to do as a nonprofit is to advocate for these preventative measures so that we don't have to do these lockdown drills, so that kids don't have to grow up thinking that school is unsafe.
Another question, has therapy become more available for the other students as of now? No.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that a little bit. I don't know, like I don't have any kind of statistics on that. But like I said, the opening of the All for Oxford Resiliency Center was a big and important step. Oakland County Mental Health Network has a reimbursement program for anybody in the community to pay out-of-pocket costs that we've incurred. So there are things being done. There are things being done. Yeah.
Okay. Do your representatives have weekly coffee hour? If so, would it be helpful to attend along with a contingent of adults in the community who live in the district of your representatives to lobby for secure storage, background checks, and ban on automatic weapons?
So I think Ms. J put in the chat a little bit ago that Representative Shriver deleted his Facebook page and has made it virtually inaccessible to contact him. He doesn't respond to your emails. He hosts his meetings outside of the district at a church. And so it's really hard to reach him sometimes. And he also cancels those a lot. So it's really hard to reach him. We try our best to get in contact with them. I'm actually unaware of Senator Johnson's status of her meetings, but I'm sure we can find that on her website or her Facebook page.
So go ahead.
Yeah, but yes, in-district coffee hours are a really, really great way to reach your representatives. Whether or not your personal representatives voted for or against this, it's a good opportunity to just go interface with them and let them know either this is an issue that's really important to me and I need you to support it, or to thank them for their vote. We've put a lot of pressure on our elected officials in the last month, and it's like that is their job, but we do want to deliver thanks where they deserve thanks. And so showing up at those types of things and reminding people that you appreciate that they are doing the things that we voted them in to do is also super helpful. So make sure you show up to those. The Michigan Congress is on a 2-week spring break right now, so they actually should be in district pretty often. So please look up some events around you. And like I said, either go and thank them or go and please remind them to ask for a vote on these red flag laws when they return.
Distill Social put out a series of posts on Instagram and Facebook thanking some of those legislators. So you can go look up Distill Social, find those posts and like them and share them and comment on them so more people see it. Any more questions?
Well, there's a funny comment. It seems pretty clear based on recent history in Michigan that the only way to secure reasonable gun control is to vote Republicans out of office. I'm not going to comment on that, but I thought it was funny. The gun buyback got almost unanimous support from the Oakland BOC. Even the most conservative commissioner was in strong support. Any comment about that?
Oakland County really is doing a great job at what they can do at the county level to try and combat some of this. They have an excellent task force on gun violence. Karen McDonald also has kind of a sister effort going in the county, and yeah, the Board of Commissioners single-handedly made that gun buyback happen, and it was very impressive and proof that it works in communities.
Okay. Are many of the parents of Oxford students involved with you in your organization? I know you answered here, but maybe you can talk about that.
Yes, I really want to highlight that while the community is quite conservative, a lot of the students are not. They don't share their parents' values most of the time. Some are very progressive. So we've been able to get some of the students involved in our work as well, either lobbying or making phone calls or sending emails. It's been really important to have their voices in this fight as well. But yes, we've had some parents who've been very supportive of our efforts and that have helped out starting the organization, also keeping things moving forward.
So one person says, we all appreciate hearing your voices, know you have our support. So that was a nice comment. Gun advocates like to say guns don't kill people, people kill people. But people with guns can kill a lot more people and a lot faster and easier than people without guns. Any changes to be made in school policy?
I'm going to react to the one about guns don't kill people.
Yep.
Cars don't kill people, their drivers do. But you know what? We legislate what people can do with their cars.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What is the viewpoint of the local leaders in Oxford, such as the Board of Trustees and Michael Spitz?
Before we do talk about that, just the question ahead of it had asked about changes to school policy.
Yes.
I'm not sure if the question meant like, has there been any changes in Oxford, or just in general, are there things that we're advocating for? Just while I have all of you, right, as an audience, something that I do want to make sure that I bring to light is that Dylan had answered the question already about like readiness and preparedness and drills and training that we go through. As difficult as safety drills are to conduct in school, I am very, very confident that our protocols on that day kept people safe and saved people's lives. And I don't doubt that and have not doubted that for the last year and a half. That being said, we as a district chose to have those things in place. We chose to adopt ALICE years ago, which is the safety protocol that we had, and implement and train on it. We chose to purchase those night locks and put them in our doors. We choose to have an SRO and a relationship with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, which can be problematic in and of itself, but those are still decisions that we made about safety as a district. But those were all things that we had to advocate for ourselves and then pay for out of pocket. And that's the thing that's really concerning to me as an education advocate too, is that we're making safety inequitable across our state, right? That we are preventing districts that don't have the money or time or energy to get these types of programs from being able to have the most updated safety protocols. And that part is really, really scary to me, because we can't make these things inequitable across our state. That if we know ALICE is the best type of system, then every single school should have that, no questions asked. And if we know night locks keep people safe, then every school should have those things. I'm not like a night lock representative. That's not like, this isn't an infomercial. But I do want to just mention though that those decisions are made in a district by district basis, and that part is scary to me.
I promised folks that we talk a little bit about the status of the legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Have all in the Senate, all the bills have been passed? Is that correct?
Yes. So following the shooting at Michigan State University, there was nearly identical bill packages presented in both the House and the Senate. It was a set of 11 bills total, but we call them, they were basically what we call 3 packages covering 3 main topics. One of them was truly universal background checks. The reason that we use that phrase truly universal is because the way that the current background check law in Michigan exists is that we only require background checks for the purchase of a pistol. And if we change just that one word, if we change the word pistol to firearm in that law, we then have background checks on any kind of firearm purchase in our state. And so we're closing a lot of loopholes that existed there. The second set of packages was on secure storage. So like we've talked about a lot, that would require people that do own guns legally to have them secured and safely stored when they're out of control of the individual that owns them. So anytime that they're not on their person, they're stored safely in some kind of a lock or a safe. Ammunition is stored separately from that, and that they're inaccessible to young people in the home. And then the third package of bills is what we call ERPOs, ERPOs, or extreme risk protection orders. Sometimes those are also called red flag laws. So anytime you hear any three of those things, it's all the same types of laws. Those are the ones that would allow people to have their guns temporarily removed from them if they were presenting as either a danger to themselves or other people in the community around them. And it's the reason that that package of bills has been the most difficult to pass is because they're the most complicated. It takes a lot of steps. We're ensuring that people still have due process. We're making sure that we're all in agreement about who is able to initiate that type of an ask from someone. So all those things are what's being worked on behind the scenes. So as it stands right now, the package on universal background checks and the package on secure storage have passed both the House and the Senate and are on their way to Governor Whitmer's desk to be signed into law. So that part is very, very exciting. The third package of laws on these extreme risk protection orders have passed the Senate and are out of committee in the House, but have not yet been called for a vote. And like I said, we're on a 2-week recess right now from the legislature. And so hopefully everybody is spending some time finalizing their vote on that, and that we'll have a vote on that as soon as they return back up to Lansing in 2 weeks.
Is there any reason to be concerned about that being passed? Have you heard anything that maybe it wouldn't be?
The fact that they didn't get the vote done before recess is concerning. Yes, it meant that they didn't have the votes. Otherwise they would have called it. So yes, that's concerning. But like I said, it's not completely shocking. We knew that that was the most complicated set. And so we just want to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. We want to make sure that law enforcement is at the table in terms of enforcement, and that everyone's being heard. One of the concerns with extreme risk protection orders in terms of enforcement is that it could potentially negatively impact communities of color. And we want to make sure that the laws are written in a way that we're avoiding or preventing that, because the fear is that if police officers are allowed to initiate these red flag calls, they could then show up at the homes of gun owners and say, you are a threat to me and I want your firearm taken away from you. And so we're just making sure that everything behind the scenes is cleaned up in that. So yes, there is a little bit of a reason
that you think it would be useful for the folks who are on this session tonight to get involved, to push things through, or to help push things. You let me know. And
yeah, if every single person can call or email your House of Representatives member and say, we would really, really like it for you to call a vote on this final package of gun safe bills, and we need you to vote yes. That's what we need. We need to vote on them. We need them to get sent to Governor Whitmer.
And Chuck, we did make a resource for that. We can send that to you to send out to the viewers tonight.
Okay, super. And the folks who didn't make it but did register, because we find that about as many people come in and view the video as live. Well,
yeah. Sorry, I talked too long on that one, but making sure that we understand what's behind the legislation is a really important part of this.
Yeah, we want to get it done. Have to get it done. Well, again, thank you both so much, and for what you're doing, and for I can't adequately describe what it must be like for you to go through this time and time again. But while we're sad for you, we're inspired by you, we're proud of you, we're thankful for you. And Dylan, when you run for political office, I'll run your first fundraiser for you here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you.
Okay?
It's a plan.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not at all surprised. 2 weeks from today, we're going to have a fascinating program. I'm not sure what it is, but the three that are under consideration are all fascinating. I think I'm going to try and lighten up the next one, so it won't be as gut wrenching, if you will. And thank you all for attending. Thank you, Noemi, and the JCC for hosting, and I wish you all a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.